My name is Olivia Chin, and for the past 15 years, I've been the family disappointment, not because I failed, but because I dared to follow a path my parents never drew on the map. Another family dinner, another round of subtle jabs and not-so-subtle reminders of how I'd fallen short. I adjusted my simple black dress as I approached the sprawling mansion. Yes, their mansion, the one I'd secretly helped finance. Not that they'd ever know. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood framed in the doorway, every inch the picture of high society elegance in designer couture, her expression already lined with disapproval. "Olivia, you're late, everyone's here," she said crisply, "and couldn't you have worn something more appropriate?" I glanced at my dress, understated, elegant. It cost more than her entire outfit, but it didn't scream money the way she liked. "Nice to see you too, Mom." Inside, the dining room hummed with the usual tension. My brother Michael, the golden child, occupied the seat at the head of the table, Dad's old spot, flashing his new Rolex like it was a badge of honor. His wife Jessica clung to him like a designer handbag. Diana, the youngest, was there too, fresh from her latest all-expenses-paid vacation, courtesy of our ever-indulgent parents. "Look who finally made it," Michael said with a smirk, "still driving that old Toyota, Liv." If only he knew, that Toyota was just camouflage. The Real collection sat in a private garage across town, guarded and gleaming, cars that made his leased BMW look like a toy. "Some of us still believe in earning our way," I replied, sliding into my usual seat, far end of the table, far from the family pride. "Oh, sweetheart," Mom chimed in, resting a hand on Michael's shoulder, "running a little consulting firm isn't exactly the same as managing millions at Morgan Stanley." I took a sip of water, concealing my amusement. Michael wasn't some executive powerhouse. He was mid-level, at best. I knew because my firm had recently evaluated Morgan Stanley for a potential acquisition. But sure, let them believe he ran Wall Street. "Speaking of careers," Diana said, flicking her new diamond bracelet in the light, "have you considered getting a real job, Olivia? Maybe Michael could help." "I'm doing just fine, Diana." Mom scoffed as she ladled out the appetizers. "You're 35, no husband, no children, operating some tiny company from a rented office. That's not fine, dear, that's embarrassing." Dad, nursing his wine in silence until now, finally spoke. "She's right, we didn't put you through Harvard for this." I almost laughed. They hadn't paid for anything. I worked through school, built my company from nothing, and now ran Phoenix Consulting Group, one of the most powerful firms in the business. But to them, I was still just stubborn Olivia with her quaint little company. "Still a nobody," Mom muttered as she sat. Then my phone rang. Normally I'd silence it, but this call, I'd been expecting. The name flashed on the screen, Sarah Martinez. "Excuse me," I said, rising, "I need to take this." "During dinner?" Mom hissed. I stepped out, answered the call. "Mrs. Chin," Sarah said, crisp and clear, "the $50 million acquisition of Anderson Tech is ready. We need your signature within the hour to close on the Asian markets." My family stiffened at the mention of $50 million. Dad nearly choked. "Send it to my secure email," I replied. "I'll sign it now." I opened my laptop. Yes, that laptop, the one they probably thought I used for invoices, and reviewed the final documents. A few swift clicks, and the deal was sealed. Silence, a thick, stunned silence as I returned to the table. Dad cleared his throat. "Olivia, what was that?" I closed the laptop with a soft click. "Just business, nothing to concern you." I picked up my fork, smiling. "Now, shall we eat?" No one spoke, not a single insult, jab, or passive-aggressive remark. For the first time in years, my silence held more weight than their approval ever did. Dinner dragged on with awkward glances and clinking cutlery. Eventually, Mom couldn't help herself. $50 million, she said, feigning nonchalance. "Surely there's been some mistake. Your consulting firm couldn't possibly." "Actually," Michael cut in, brows furrowed, "there's been talk at the bank. A firm, Phoenix Consulting, snapping up tech companies all across Asia." He trailed off, staring at me now with a different kind of interest. I met his gaze, and smiled. I took another sip of wine, savoring the silence. "Phoenix Consulting Group." Diana nearly dropped her phone. "Wait, that's not your company. Phoenix is huge. It's been all over the financial news. They just bought that software company in Singapore for, like, $2 billion. 2.4, I corrected softly. The air shifted, 10 degrees colder in an instant. Dad's hand trembled slightly as he set down his wineglass. You're lying, Mom snapped. This is some performance. Phoenix Consulting Group is led by some brilliant CEO named, she trailed off, searching. Olivia Phoenix, I said. I changed my last name legally 10 years ago, right after you told me I was tarnishing the family name by leaving Morgan Stanley. Michael looked like he'd seen a ghost. That can't be. Phoenix is worth $37 billion as of this morning's close, I said. With Anderson Tech, we should hit 40 by next week. Silence, heavy and complete. I could almost hear the sound of their understanding shattering and reforming as they grasped the truth. The daughter they dismissed had built an empire they couldn't even comprehend. My phone buzzed again, this time, a news alert. Phoenix Consulting Group acquires Anderson Tech in surprise move. Stock soars 28%. I turned the screen toward them. Mom covered her mouth. Dad looked faint. Jessica stared at Michael as if she'd never seen him before. Why didn't you tell us? Diana whispered. I met each of their eyes. Would it have mattered? For 15 years, not one of you asked about my work. You were too busy praising Michael's padded resume and funding Diana's luxury hobbies. But the tiny office downtown, Mom stammered. I laughed. That's for client meetings. Phoenix's actual headquarters? The top 10 floors of that glass tower Dad always points to when he talks about real success. Michael suddenly shoved back his chair. This is insane. I would have known if my sister was behind Phoenix. I work in finance. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through email. According to the org chart we received last week, you're a level 3 manager in Morgan Stanley's domestic retail division. Not quite the executive director title you've been throwing around at family dinners. His face flushed deep red. You've been spying on me? No, Michael, we're acquiring Morgan Stanley's Asian operations. Your department came up during due diligence. Page 247, if you're curious. Jessica looked at him like she'd just realized she married a resume. Dad's voice was low now, thoughtful. The Anderson Tech bid last month. We lost that contract. That was you? I nodded. Nothing personal. Phoenix just had the better fit. Mom stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. Well, she said, voice tight with forced cheer, this changes everything. Olivia, darling, we must plan a celebration. I'll call the club. No. My voice was calm but final. Nothing's changed. I'm still the woman you dismissed an hour ago. The only difference is now you know that the family shame has been quietly building one of the most powerful firms in the world. I rose, smoothing my cheap dress, a couture piece that cost more than Mom's car, and picked up my bag. Thank you for dinner. I have an early call tomorrow, another acquisition to close. Wait, Diana called, panic creeping into her voice. My startup idea, maybe we could talk. I've got a pitch deck. Submit it through proper channels, I said, already walking. Phoenix evaluates every opportunity with care, but I should warn you, we prefer founders with experience. As I reached the door, Dad hurried after me. Olivia, sweetheart, let's not be hasty. We're family. Maybe we could discuss some investment opportunities. I turned to him with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. You had 15 years to invest in me. You passed. And with that, I stepped into the night, the soft click of the door behind me louder than any applause they'd never given. I turned to face them one last time. The entire family had followed me to the foyer, their expressions a chaotic mix of shock, regret, and barely hidden greed. You know what's funny? I said, hand resting on the doorknob. All those years you thought I was struggling, I was actually helping you. I let it hang for a beat, then delivered the truth they never saw coming. The mysterious buyer who saved this house from foreclosure 3 years ago. Me. The anonymous donation that kept Michael's job safe during the Morgan Stanley layoffs. Also me. That lucky stock tip that paid for Diana's condo. You're welcome. Their faces crumpled, the weight of the truth sinking in with brutal clarity. I did those things because, despite everything, you're still family, but I never needed your approval, and I certainly don't now. Mom stepped forward, eyes wet with sudden tears. Olivia, please. I have another dinner tomorrow, I said, my voice cool, with Warren Buffett. He wants to discuss a partnership. I imagine that counts as a real job by your standards. Not that it matters anymore. I opened the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Michael, the Morgan Stanley acquisition finalizes next week. You may want to update your resume. Phoenix has very high standards for middle management. The door shut behind me with a satisfying click. As I walked to my old Toyota, a custom-armored luxury vehicle wrapped in modest disguise, the chaos erupted inside. Mom wailing. Dad shouting, probably calling his broker. Diana shrieking for someone to explain what just happened. None of it mattered. For 15 years, I was the family disappointment, while quietly building something legendary. Now they knew. But the most satisfying part? I didn't care anymore. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, updates on tomorrow's meetings. I smiled as I started the engine. The family shame had an empire to run. The next morning, my face was everywhere. Phoenix strikes again, Anderson Tech acquisition rocks global markets. The headlines screamed. Hundreds of missed calls, messages from suddenly interested relatives. Cousins with startup pitches. Uncles with urgent investment ideas. Estranged aunts claiming they always believed in me. I ignored them all. At the office, Sarah handed me my usual morning coffee. Your mother's in the lobby, she said, with your sister. They've been here since 7. Standard protocol, I replied, stepping into my corner office with a panoramic view of the city. No exceptions, they'll need to request an appointment like everyone else. Understood. I sat at my desk, already shifting gears to the day's agenda. 3 deals to close, 2 partnerships to negotiate, and a merger to finalize. Oh, and Sarah, send a note to HR at Morgan Stanley, I added. My brother's role should be evaluated on merit during the transition. Sarah smiled. Of course, Mrs. Phoenix, purely on merit. The family shame had finally shown them what success looked like. But the real victory wasn't the money, not the power. It was building an empire while they weren't even watching. Some people need applause to feel accomplished. I just needed to prove it to myself. That they now knew exactly who they underestimated. That was just the bonus. My phone buzzed again, a text from Mom. Darling, please, we're your family. We deserve a chance to be part of your success. I typed back quickly. You had 15 years of chances. Then I silenced my phone, opened my laptop, and got back to work. Empires don't build themselves. Something my family was only now beginning to understand.